County.
Okay, Stu, I want to interrupt you for a second. All right, we're back on the air on Spreaker. If y'all notice a gap, that's because I'm on a 30-minute plan. All right, we're good to go.
But anyway, Jack, since we were off a speaker for a minute, Jack was killed in a rollover in 2002 in Denver. And uh, he had told me this story about a Secret Service agent that was a friend of his that was retired. I don't want to mention his name. I know who it is.
Okay.
But he was one that was on Kennedy's detail. And apparently about 2 months, 3 months in that time frame before John Kennedy was assassinated, while he's doing all these things of signing that executive order to eliminate the, to fire Alan Dulles, the head of CIA, to eliminate the Federal Reserve by signing executive order 10001 or whatever it is of reestablishing, getting rid of the Federal Reserve and implement the U.S. dollar, the actual American currency. And let's see, what was the other one? He said he was going to break up the CIA in 1,000 pieces. He was going to end the war in Vietnam because he found out there was all to deal with CIA drugs over there with that general in Cambodia, etc. And let's see, there was another thing the alien connection. And
Fallen Angels, yeah.
Yeah, Fallen Angels, 1954-2012 alien agreement.
For those that are listening.
So he said he was going to expose all that to American people. And if you notice, I have on my site additional breaking news. If you click on that, I believe there's that photo of him in there talking about there's a revolution coming and so forth. He talks about, well, this is what he was referring to. Those were a few days, or a few months before his death. But here's a story that most people don't know about John Kennedy that I was told by my friend Jack. And Jack knew, and I met the guy, okay? I don't know if he's still alive now or not. He was getting up in his age, but he's a former Secret Service agent. But he was on the Kennedy detail. And about 3 months before Kennedy died, or was killed by George Bush and a whole bunch of them, and there's 2 stories that I have up there, the Secret Service agent said that they were taking Kennedy one night out of the White House to one of his girlfriends. Apparently, he was the president wanting to have sex with 1,000 women while he was in the White House. He was doing a lot of chicks, okay? He wasn't too faithful to his wife. Well, they were hauling him over to some gal's house. There's people have always known about the Marilyn Monroe thing with Kennedy brothers and all that other. I mean, they were doing their fair share of the women, should we say, even though they were married and all that, not being faithful. But the thing was that they hauled him over there in a limo, 3 Secret Service agents did. And they went down the street. Now, this is the story of Kennedy being saved that night, 3 months before his death. They're on some street in Washington, D.C. They're going down this one-way street, and they can't find a friggin' address. It's like they're flashing lights up on the houses and everything. They cannot find an address anywhere. They know they're in the right block, like 400 block or 500 block, whatever it was. They knew they were on the right block, but they didn't know which house it was because they hadn't been there before. So they're hunting this house. Well, they go around the block because this is a one-way street, so they got to go around the block, and they're back there in the limo. Come back around, they're down the street again. Well, this is what Secret Service agent said. After the 3rd time, they went around the block, couldn't find a damn address. They decided there was a church on the corner, and it was like in the middle of the week, like a Wednesday night or something. They were holding service. And they stopped at that church, pulled in the parking lot, because the parking lot had a few cars in it and all. So one of the Secret Service agents, he goes in to find out which side of the street and what address, where it'd be, right? So he goes in to find out. He didn't come out. Well, they're on their walkie-talkies and stuff, and they're trying to get a hold of him, and he's not answering. So the next one says, well, this is out of protocol. We can't leave the president alone. Oh, yeah, be okay with me. I got the automatic and all. Run in there real quick. And they were in the limo, and supposedly, bulletproof, all this other. They go in there. He doesn't come out. So the 3rd one that was with the president that I'm telling you about told me the story, at my friend Jack's. Anyway, he was the 3rd one that went in with the president. They didn't come out. They stayed in there. The president got saved that night. They got on his hands and knees and asked Christ to come into his life. That was 3 months before his death.
Okay.
And then he started signing those executive orders shortly after that to do all these things for the country, and they killed him. That's the story I heard.
And Lyndon Baines Johnson reversed every one as soon as he got in office.
It was civil rights violation. I mean, civil rights was the other thing he gave us because of Martin Luther King and the others. They gave us those civil rights, which was the redress of grievances, where we can sue the government for doing something against us that we didn't have before in our Constitution. We weren't supposed to have our constitutional rights violated, but if they were violated, that's what came out of the black movement in the 60s, was that Johnson had to pass that legislation the following year after Kennedy's death, and he signed it into law. Civil rights. That means Title 42, USC 42, 1983, and 1981 through 83, 6,
which I'm
7.
very familiar with when I did my time.
Sue the government for violating our civil and constitutional rights. That's the legislation that came out of Kennedy's death and Martin Luther King's death that gives us the right to go sue the government. Now we got such corrupt judges, you go take them for them, they just dismiss them and, protect it.
Yeah, frivolous lawsuit.
Yeah.
Well, I heard that before.
Yeah, right.
Trust me, when you're an ex-convict,
without hearings, they do all kinds of, because we have to look back. Who appointed these judges? Daddy Bush appointed them. Ronald Reagan in his years appointed them. You got the Clintons appointed them. Then you had Junior appointed them. And now you have Barack Obama appoint some. They're there for life. But they can be impeached and recalled. But the process of being impeached from their judgeships has to come through the Congress and Senate. It has to come from a U.S. congressman or a U.S. Senate to make a recommendation based on their corruption in their own district, in their U.S. District Court. It has to come through. So if we've got dirty congressmen and senators, I can't contact Claire McCaskill and say, remove these judges, Claire. They're violating my rights right now where I'm having an appeal on this deal where I'm trying to come against the bankers to put them in jail for robbing the country of $100 trillion and the world. And so can I get a hold of Claire McCaskill and get her to hold a hearing and make a recommendation to the Judiciary Committee to bring this judge up on the impeachment charges? No, they're all protected because they were protected by the same crime syndicate that's controlling our politicians. And this is the problem that we have. We've got to stop this. We've got to clean it up. And the only way I see, Charles, of cleaning it up is they got to be brought to justice. I keep hoping, because even though they've committed treason and sedition, many of them.
How many times?
Violations, okay? We have the right as Americans to remove them which includes our politicians. If our politicians don't do their job under the Declaration of Independence, we have the right to go in there physically remove them and take them out. Not kill them, take them out, remove them from office, and put new people in for the security of this country. That's what it says, new guards for the security of this country.
Well, I'm all for that except for one thing, Stu. Term limits. One time only. That's it. You're out.
Have you ever really read the Constitution?
I'm familiar with the second, the first, and the fifth, and my favorite, the seventh.
I don't have mine handy right here.
But
in the Constitution, if you look in those articles, it says about Congress and Senate, they shall serve a term. And it says in the Congress, it says it shall serve a term, the congressman shall serve a term for 4 years in the District of Columbia. I call it the District of Criminals today. And then they're to return to their home, meaning one term.
That's it.
It says a senator is supposed to serve 6-year term,
Yep.
and at the end of that term, he's supposed to return.
And that's too long as far as I'm concerned.
Fathers had said about term limitations. They knew that they would become career politicians, be like the monarch over the Queen of England and a monarch. Monarchs, as far as I'm concerned, you just cut their heads off and you get rid of the problem.
No problem with me.
but they knew that there would be a monarch if they didn't put the term limitations. So they actually have it built in the Constitution by saying, if you read it really fine print, it says they're to serve for 4 years. Not 8 years, not 12, not 16, not that they can rerun and all the others. And it says the 6 years on the senators. Read it very carefully. That's what was truly meant by this, and people have a misunderstanding about it. But you might go back to that and post it up with this interview or something about that term limitations. I don't have my Constitution.
What article is that?
I don't remember. It's in those articles.
Okay,
It talks about the president, one of the first articles, and his term limitation, and then it goes on to say the Congress and the Senate. But it says right there, 4 years to 6 years. That was the meant, and then they return home is what it says, meaning they serve for that 4-year limit, or they serve for that 6-year limit. I mean, that's what our founding fathers really were saying when they made that in the Constitution. They weren't saying going up there for 28 years, obstruct justice, or 32 years like Arlen Specter that recently died.
Mr. Magic Bullet.
That little punk, that Israel supporter punk, Israeli Mossad punk that obstructed justice. I mean, I don't know how many times I tried to beat through his committee, getting around him to get information to the committee to have them hold hearings on stuff, and he always obstructed. He was one of the biggest obstructors. Daddy Bush had him there and paid him. Arlen Specter had accounts in Switzerland. I have the bank account numbers. He had over $300 million from bribes from the boys, the council, over the years that he took to obstruct. And you know, when he died, what was it, a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I put right up on my internet site about him being a big obstructor. And I even put up there something along the lines of, I wish you the best in hell. I hope the fire burns up the crack of your ass, pal. You know, because that's where he's going. That's where he went. He's a New World Order pig. He was a pedophile on top of that. And he was also involved in Iran-Contra and benefited by the millions of dollars, along with that Santorum that ran for president. He was also a part of that, where they benefited from a company called International Signals and Control out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. And it's in Al Martin, the Iran-Contra whistleblower's book, called The Conspirator. And it talks about that, and about that company and how much money they actually made out of the deal. But Santorum made money right along. And if you notice, Santorum was always patting old Arlen Specter on the back because they were partners. So see, they've infiltrated, the crime syndicate has infiltrated in our Congress and Senate so damn deep. Unless we had a miracle today, during this election, we all know by this evening and tomorrow and the following days to come, because of the northeast storm, there are going to be a lot of those are held up for a few days. We're going to see really how this plays out. I don't think we're going to have any change. If we have change, it might be the president, but it's going to go from one turd that you could flush down the toilet to another turd.
Well, let's not forget, Stu, we're still waiting on the military votes to come in from overseas and expatriate Americans who live overseas. We're still waiting on that.
Yeah, we have those votes, and what have we got in the way of obstruction there? We've already got them yelling and screaming all over the internet in the past couple of days about lost votes by the military. The military's ticked off because they haven't been able to count their votes. There's a lot of things it's just going to be a big fraud today. I really believe this. I don't think there was enough good people in government to protect the voting booths and to protect those ballots. I was hoping my friends, and I don't know for positive, but I was hoping they put those satellites up there to keep those West Stars away from the voting booths today. If they did, we might have a fair and honest election like we had in 2006. And that was the only time that I'm aware of since the early 90s that we probably had a fair, honest election. But I think we demonstrated or talked about tonight, I know we only got about 10 minutes to go here, I think we've kind of laid it out.
How
they control.
Well, okay. What's your schedule? Do you got something else to do?
Well, I got to finish up a
Okay, all right.
Return a couple dozen calls. I said I'd give you a couple hours tonight.
All right.
Okay, and I think in 10 minutes we'll have that 2 hours pretty much burned up. But
okay.
Got to do something about this, Charles. And I want to say this in the next couple of minutes. So, we're all fundraising. Okay, we're all trying to do fundraise. I know you are, to keep up your activity, and you'd like to expand and do your money bomb, and I'm doing mine, should we say, and we're all doing our different things. And you've got probably it on your website. I've got it on mine. And I just tell people that, look, we're all out here together. And, you know, some people are on the front lines, like you and I are, Charles, and others, out here trying to make the noise. I'm asking people to get behind us. You know, it's just like myself. I got filings against these people in court. You know, I just had obstruction on Friday. I have a future attorney that had obstruction. He's got a civil rights case against him. And he's not my attorney. They just barred him illegally because 2 U.S. attorneys got killed in Dallas, Texas over Jeb Bush and the health care, and he had sued over that, and they got killed. And, you know, this guy was illegally disbarred without proof and evidence. So I submitted the proof and evidence that he was illegally disbarred. Then they tried to kill me 3 times, basically over this stuff in the past 2 years. And so I filed injunctive relief, back the same judge obstructed, put all the evidence in, and then in my latest couple filings, I put where it says in the top of my news page, I've intentionally put them up there, the current ones, it says motions for objections and recommendations to the judge. I boxed them all up on their felonies. All the felonies they committed against me in this case, and what they've done to Brett Landreth, who says he'll represent me if the court will allow him to give him his license back. But yet, the obstruction continues. So here this Margia, or not Margia, but Melgrim, another judge, turns around and dismisses it, saying my case is frivolous. Well, in the meantime, I knew they were going to do this, so I had boxed them up, knew they would play this game, and I'm going to go further, and I don't want to tell everybody and give away my hand and card, but of course I'll appeal at the time and all this, but I got new tricks for them. And these new tricks are going to be charges against the judges. And I just filed a charge against the judge I asked for injunctive relief because they tried to murder me, and I put it in there, and they're saying I don't have the right to be have an attorney represent, and I don't have the right to appear before a grand jury. And so I sued them in a different court, and I sued the federal judge obstructing from the beginning, and I sued the 2 Somalian hit team that was working for Barack Obama and the FBI agent Carol Davis out of Houston running the operation for the Department of Homeland Security, and I could prove all this. So I sued them in Johnson County Court in Olathe, Kansas, in state court in Kansas, because they burned down a customer's house, so it gave me jurisdiction. Knowing that these guys would pull this stuff and dismiss this other stuff, so I sued them in the other court. Well, I knew they would remove it to federal court because it was a federal jurisdiction, but I did it because if I my new case up there that I have to write myself, which is about 90% done, but it names the cops and the cover-up, and it shows, I'm showing all the evidence right in the damn filing, or I'll say 70% of it, that they can't dismiss this thing. Now, I got a federal judge I just sued because she's obstructing, and she's in the middle of it because now she's a co-conspirator to obstruction of justice, and she's a co-conspirator now to, and all these judges are, to attempted murder. Because they didn't act upon the information under 18 U.S.C. 4 that they were given in this injunctive relief. Instead, they're just going to protect the Bush crime syndicate because what is in my
usual?
They robbed and looted the country to $100 trillion. I can show where $30 trillion of it is, that they created mortgages out of thin air, that they committed treason and sedition by selling Saddam Hussein biological chemical agents to Iraq, known as the Iraq-8 scandal, the B&L Bank scandal that had Hillary laundering. Leonard Millman and George Bush and Jeb Bush and Neil Bush were all involved in the sale of those biologicals and making them in Fruita, Colorado and Boca Raton, Florida, and shipping them out of the warehouses to Millman. And that's under the Barclay-Cohen-Denture Act, which is treason and sedition. And that they shipped it through Israel, England, Israel, and they shipped them on Mercedes trucks up to Iraq. That Anwar bin Shari was involved with, one of the other council members, and that they used those in the Scud missiles in the Desert Storm 1 that contaminated our troops and all the other troops, French troops and UN troops and everybody else who were over there. They're dying from cyanide, HIV, synthetic AIDS, hepatitis A, B, or C. were put in those batches. And it's mainly the cyanide that absorbs through the skin that these troops are ex-military are all being affected because it affects the organs. It eats up the organs.
Of course, that was all by design.
It was all about design.
And to keep from paying them any more money than necessary if they got sick and came back home.
Yes. And on the front of my website,
gotta cut your losses, you know.
one of my key witnesses about the treason and sedition, there's a statement where he's reporting to the FBI with me after I filed a grand jury demand in '95. And the U.S. attorney was ordered by a judge in Denver to hear me out, to allow me to appear before this grand jury. And they obstructed with Al Martin over Boulder Properties Limited, blackmail Congress senators. I was told that I was supposed to work with this FBI agent to provide me information. I said, look, we're going to look at about 4 or 5 major things right now. One of them was this Gulf War syndrome thing, to get them all arrested on treason and sedition. These particular ones, Daddy Bush and Millman, my ex-in-laws and everything. In the site it says witnesses. Okay? One of them said Jesus talking about 79,000 houses disappear off of HUD, and you know how they come after guys like me. Another's Al Martin, and it shows in his book the connections with Millman and the Bushes. And believe me, his whole book shows all these connections, but that's where he names my ex-in-law. And the third witness that's still alive, Peter Qualja, they killed his wife after he went on Nightline. He's an NSA investigator looking for terrorist activity, and what does he find? Daddy Bush and Millman and Jeb Bush and all of them doing all this illegal stuff. The biological chemical agents, the story to keep re-resurrected, changes names, Iraq 8, BNL Bank scandal, and Gulf War illness, they're now calling it. That is a statement to the FBI, which the FBI obstructed justice, Mark Holslaw, who now targets me for Homeland Security, using the Ted Gunderson crowd and all these little stooges on the internet, the Kenadachis and all this to slander me and all that. They're a bunch of stooges, don't have badges, but they're on the FBI payroll. They go out there and target people like me to try to slander and all this. They're going to be named in the suit soon. I'm going to take several suits, do several suits. But look at some of the stuff that I've got up there and listen to those interviews, folks. This is reporting to the FBI about this Gulf War illness, and they obstructed justice over it. This is treason and sedition. That makes him co-conspirators to treason and sedition under the RICO Act, Edit Sequence 1962 Act. Okay, it makes him a co-conspirator knowingly or not. He's acting as a co-conspirator to this act. This guy can spend the rest of his life in jail, and I plan on putting him there, Charles. I plan on putting a lot of them in. I'm not going to stop. I've decided that I'm going to take out the Millman crowd and the guys that destroyed our economy. Economic plunder is the death penalty. Treason and sedition is the death penalty. Murder is the death penalty. Narcotics trafficking into the United States and money laundering thereof is not the death penalty, but it's life and imprisonment. What I have on the Bushes alone, Bill, Hillary Clinton, Daddy Bush, Jeb Bush, Neil Bush, George W.
Don't forget their cousin, Barack Obama. He is family, you know.
Those are the keys that I'm after. Those are the keys. And those keys right there can return. Daddy Bush is worth $79 trillion, is what U.S. intelligence tells me. That's a lot of friggin' bread. Millman's was worth $30 trillion. Or at least I know that there's $30 trillion worth of hardcore assets. Shopping centers, high rises, Jackson Stevens office. You go look at the real estate records and find out what corporation it is that owns Jackson Stevens office down in there, and start looking at some of that property. And find out what corporations, and see if it doesn't go back to Norman Brownstein in Denver. Okay? You do a little bit of investigation, report back to me on that. Like Whitewater, all that Twin Cities, Little Rock, all that stuff was all tied up with the Whitewater development and the Costa Grande development.
Oh, we're very familiar with Whitewater here in Arkansas.
Jr. and everything. And who was Clinton's attorney? James M. Lyons. Who was on the board of directors of MDC Holdings that committed all this fraud, every financial fraud there's been, and all the things we talked about tonight, running that one corporation, James M. Lyons, who was Clinton's attorneys, okay, and who paid for during the Paula Jones case and the other case involving his impeachment, who paid those fines for them? Chubb Security out of Denver, Colorado, owned by who? Leonard Millman. And who was the attorney of record on the board of directors of all this stuff? You keep seeing his name pop up. Norman Brownstein. Norman Brownstein. The one running Jack Abramoff, the one sitting at Deutsche Bank, making these mortgage bundles into derivatives where they could take $100 billion worth of mortgages and make, $100 billion worth of, or $100 trillion worth of mortgages that had no houses to back them, and they could turn around and derivatize them by selling them through their own banks and peddle on them, and they could derivatize them up to $600 trillion that caused worldwide economic collapse. Norman Brownstein, he was sitting on it as a director, vice president, in charge of derivatives at Deutsche Bank of Canada. Everybody wants to point the finger at Goldman Sachs. They were just part of the shuffling of these artificial mortgages. AIG, Citicorp, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, these key banks. But it all came out of one company, MDC in Denver, Asset Investors. You look on additional breaking news, there's one link that says Larry Mizell bank bailout scamster, etc. It shows my SEC filing back at the first of the year. Here the companies are that bundled up the mortgages and sold these illegal mortgages that caused the economic collapse. Mortgages on houses that existed, where they duplicated them up to 9 times, sold them 9 times over that were illegal, and created mortgages on houses that they did not build through Richmond America, Ponderosa, General Homes, KB Homes, and these other home builders that they owned and controlled, and then sold them worldwide in bundles that caused the pension fund collapses and all the other stuff, 401ks, everybody's stuff going down at the time the bank bailout happened.
Yeah, the Colorado Civil Loan.
Interpol helped me bring them to their knees. And we thought we had them in bankruptcy court. Interpol helped me. We thought we had them in bankruptcy court. At the end of 2007, going into 2008, Bush goes and bails their ass out. And now they're back stealing houses from people that the Attorney General's put a halt to here back in January from all different states, where they're coming and saying, we own your mortgage because we're part of MERS, the electronic filing system that they created, knowing that if it ever bit them in the ass, they'd come back and say, oh, no, we have this electronic filing system, we're part of MERS. And so these were the artificial mortgages that they're sitting with now. And ever since my filing that I did on September the 5th about this, they filed, suddenly they're filing, the U.S. Attorney's Office is filing in New York, this new strike force is filing against these banks. But they don't want to hear where the originator came from. I spoke to a New York Attorney General today. I spoke to an assistant out of Denver that's involved on Friday, trying to pump it down their throat. I dealt with the SEC attorneys and a U.S. attorney back in March, and they wouldn't do anything at that time. And it's in that one filing I showed you, and it mentions Asset Investors, shows my SEC filing and all the other, but they've always, all of them are obstructed. So I'm trying to do it myself. Like I told the U.S. Attorney, or the New York Attorney General today, if you guys don't do your job, I'm going to do it for you. Now, that's the reason I'm raising money. I got legal people, attorneys on the sidelines that are willing to enter into my case. They're willing to do all the paperwork and do things. I'm trying to raise money to get that done. Yes. When the right time comes, they have to go to a court of law with me, because I can do the filings and do all that stuff with their help. But when it comes to the proper time, because there's about 6 lawsuits that need to be filed in order to get all this money back. That's a series of things besides attempted murder on me that I want to sue for, and taking away my kid 28 years ago from me, and I don't have a relationship with her because of frauds upon the court, all kinds of shit with a lifetime restraining order, where they tried to say they paid me $1.5 million to give her up, which is all big lies and everything else. That's fraud upon the courts, bribery of a judge, and 2 divorces, you know, like crazy stuff. I mean, the things that they do, okay? And they laundered the money through Millman's estate filed in Colorado, through probate, all this. That's how they launder the money. Now, all that can be confiscated. It isn't divided up among the family members and it's going into Larry Mizell's hands. Okay? I can go get that money. So that's the reason I'm asking people to donate. And what I'm giving them, Charles, is myself and Glenn Kennedy agreed to a 1-year ad on his site and my site. I get 5 million hits a month plus. It's averaging that. I got 8.5 million, I think it was in June, and then they